I always wonder, if I disappeared, would anyone in my family even notice? Ever since I was little, I knew I wasn't the child my parents had hoped for, let alone their pride and joy. They already had the perfect daughter, Sophia, my older sister by 3 years, beautiful, charming, and worshipped by our parents. And me? I was just a faint shadow beside her, an existence they tolerated simply because they had no other choice. My name is Violet. I'm 22 years old, a junior at a small art school in California. If there's one place in the world where I feel like I belong, it's in the paintings I create, the colors I choose, and the lines I carve onto paper. But my home? It was never like that. My parents David and Laura are perfectionists, and in their eyes Sophia is the definition of perfection. She was the high school prom queen, the recipient of prestigious scholarships, the child they could proudly show off to their friends and colleagues. And me? I was constantly reminded that art was a pointless hobby, that painting could never lead to a stable future. They never outright forbade me from pursuing it, but the disappointment in their eyes whenever I was mentioned was far worse than any harsh words. The only person who ever believed in me was my grandmother, Eleanor. She was the first to look at my paintings and say I had talent. She was the only one who listened to my dreams without ridicule. And she did something my parents never would. She paid my entire college tuition, giving me a chance to escape that house. Even if only for a few short years. I thought that leaving home would finally bring me freedom. But I was wrong. I learned an important lesson early on: no one was ever truly on my side. As a child, I tried so hard to please my parents, thinking that if I was better, if I behaved perfectly, they would love me more. But that never happened. They didn't need a second daughter when they already had Sophia, the golden child they had always wanted. Sophia knew exactly how special she was to our parents, and she used it to make my life miserable. It wasn't enough for her to be loved more. She wanted me to feel like I didn't deserve love at all. When I was 14, I had a crush on a boy in my class. Ethan, with his messy curls and warm smile, was the first person who made me feel seen, even if I only admired him from a distance. I never had the courage to talk to him, so instead, I drew him. Dozens of portraits, each capturing a moment I imagined him smiling at me. I kept those drawings locked away in a drawer, thinking they were my little secret. But Sophia always knew how to find my weaknesses. One Monday morning as I walked into school, I saw a crowd gathered around the bulletin board, and right in the center were my drawings. I froze as laughter erupted around me. Ethan stood there, his face flushed, avoiding my gaze. "Violet, you're such a freak." I ran home, tears streaming down my face. When I burst into the kitchen, hoping for comfort from my parents, all I got was laughter. "Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive," my mother said, wiping away tears from laughing too hard. "It was just a joke, Violet," my father added, shaking his head. "You need to learn not to take everything so seriously." Sophia stood by the counter, arms crossed, a triumphant smirk on her face. "I was just helping you get noticed, you know. No need to thank me." That was the day I realized I had no one to turn to in that house. So when I received my acceptance letter to art school, I knew this wasn't just a chance to follow my dreams. It was my one-way ticket out. Grandma Eleanor was the only person in the world who believed in me. When I got my acceptance letter, my parents just sighed, exchanging glances as if I had made some foolish mistake. "An art degree? And what exactly do you plan to do with that? No one makes money just by painting, Violet," my mother said, shaking her head. My father simply sipped his coffee, not bothering to say anything at all. But Grandma Eleanor was different. "You have talent, Violet, don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She was the only one who supported me, the only one who paid for my tuition for the past 3 years. "You don't need to worry about money. Just focus on your art." I cried when she told me that, because for the first time in my life, I felt like someone was truly on my side. And then she got sick. The cruel disease drained her strength week by week. I spent the entire summer by her side, helping her eat, talking to her, cherishing every moment we had left. One September afternoon, as I sat by her bed, she took my hand. Her eyes gentle but firm. "Violet, you have to promise me. No matter what happens, you must finish school." I choked back tears and nodded. When she turned to my parents, her voice became stern. "David, Laura, promise me you'll cover Violet's final year of tuition. She needs to finish her dream." My father nodded slowly. "Don't worry, Mom. We'll take care of Violet." A week later she was gone. At the reading of her will, Sophia was given her diamond crown, a valuable family heirloom. I received a simple diamond ring, one that Grandma wore every day. "You don't really care about jewelry, do you?" Sophia smirked as she admired her crown. I didn't argue. I simply tucked Grandma's ring away in a bank safe. I didn't know why, but I had a bad feeling about leaving it anywhere my family could reach. I had no idea that my parents' promise to Grandma would be nothing but empty words. I had never felt freer than I did living away from home. For the past 3 years, college had given me something my family never did: a sense of belonging. I quickly became close friends with two people who changed my life: Lena and Jason. Lena was a punk rock artist with electric blue hair and an energy that never dimmed. She specialized in abstract art, always coming up with ideas so bold I would never dare to try them myself. Jason was the complete opposite: quiet, introspective, but with a sculpting talent that could turn rough stone into breathtaking masterpieces. They didn't care about my past or how my family treated me. To them, I wasn't the forgotten daughter or Sophia's shadow. I was just Violet, the girl who could paint like no one else. It was Lena who suggested I get a part-time job. "There's a tattoo parlor downtown looking for a design artist," she said one day. "You should apply, they'd love your style." At first I hesitated. If my family found out I was working at a tattoo shop, they'd lose their minds. But then I reminded myself, why did I still care what they thought? I took my sketchbook and walked into the shop. The owner, a tattooed man named Mick, flipped through a few pages and nodded. "You've got an eye for art, Violet. Welcome to the team." From that moment on, I started earning my own money, no longer relying on my parents. It wasn't much, but it gave me something I had never had before: control over my own life. I never told my family about the job, nor did I tell them about the small art competitions I won. I knew they wouldn't care. But I no longer needed their approval. I was building my own life, one they could no longer control. I had never looked forward to going home for summer breaks, but this time, I felt more out of place than ever. The moment I stepped inside, I realized I had walked into a world where I didn't belong. The living room was filled with laughter, shimmering dresses, and elegantly wrapped gift boxes. At the center of it all stood Sophia, glowing in a pristine white dress, a wedding magazine in her hands. "Oh, Violet," my mother was the first to notice me. "You're home earlier than we expected." I blinked, a strange feeling rising in my chest. "What's going on?" I asked, my eyes scanning the scattered wedding invitations on the table. Sophia turned to me, her smile triumphant. "You don't know? I'm getting married." I froze. Married? When? And why hadn't anyone told me? "Who's the groom?" I forced my voice to stay steady. Sophia pulled a man to her side. "This is Nathan. He's a lawyer at a big firm in New York." "Perfect, isn't he?" Nathan politely extended a hand for a handshake, but I was too stunned to respond. My father clapped Nathan on the shoulder, pride in his voice. "Not only is he successful, but he comes from a well-off family, a perfect match." Of course. To them it was always about wealth, status, and appearances. I swallowed hard. "So, when's the wedding?" Sophia glanced at my mother and then burst into laughter. "Oh dear, were we so busy that we forgot to send you an invitation? That's terrible." My mother sighed dramatically. "We've just been overwhelmed with all the planning. Besides, does the bride's little sister really need to be there?" A cold shiver ran down my spine. I had been excluded. Again. You know, Violet, Grandma's ring would be perfect with my wedding dress. I looked up from dinner, staring straight at Sophia, trying to suppress the anger rising inside me. We were sitting around the dining table, the air heavier than usual. I had always known I was nothing more than an outsider in this family, but now, they wanted to take away the little I had left. Grandma's ring? I frowned, keeping my voice calm. Sophia smirked, tilting her head as if her request was the most obvious thing in the world. Yes. I'll be wearing Grandma's crown on my wedding day, and if I had her ring too, it would be perfect. I know you don't care about jewelry, so why keep it? I gripped my fork tightly. Grandma left it to me, Sophia, not to you. Oh, Violet, my mother sighed, setting her knife down. You're always so selfish. Your sister just wants to borrow it. This is her special day. I knew them. I knew Sophia. She never borrowed anything. If I handed over the ring, I would never see it again. I shook my head. No. I'm not giving it to you. For a moment the room was silent, then, my father spoke, his voice colder than I had ever heard it. If you don't give Sophia the ring, don't expect us to pay for your final year of college. It felt like a knife had been driven straight into my chest. I looked around the table, searching for even a hint of hesitation, a sliver of sympathy. But all I saw was expectation. They weren't asking me, they were ordering me. They were willing to break their promise to Grandma just to please Sophia. They had chosen her again. My hands trembled as I unfastened the necklace holding the key to my safe deposit box and placed it on the table. Take it, I whispered, my voice barely audible. Sophia picked up the key, her victorious smile widening. I knew then, I had lost. I knew I couldn't stay in that house any longer. After the night I was forced to hand over Grandma's ring to Sophia, I felt like whatever little value I had in my family's eyes had completely vanished. I wasn't their daughter. I was just an unwanted obstacle. The next morning I packed my bags and wheeled my suitcase to the door. My mother glanced at me, raising an eyebrow. Where are you going? I kept my voice even. To visit Lena. We have some art projects to work on together. I'll be back before the wedding. She nodded absent-mindedly, uninterested. I knew she didn't really care whether I stayed or left, as long as I didn't cause any trouble. Lena welcomed me with open arms. You have the best timing, Violet, she joked as I stepped into her small but cozy apartment. I had a wonderful week there. No judgmental stares, no cruel words. Just art, music, and conversations that actually meant something. I felt like myself. But then, one morning, I checked my phone, and my heart stopped. My social media was flooded with wedding photos. Sophia stood there, dazzling in her pristine white gown, Grandma's diamond crown glistening on her head, and on her finger was Grandma's ring. I held my breath as I read the caption. Thank you to our family and friends for making this day perfect. Goodbye for now, we're off on our honeymoon. My grip tightened around my phone. The wedding had happened. And me? I hadn't even been invited. I immediately called my mother. She picked up after the second ring. Mom, why? My voice broke. You told me the wedding hadn't happened yet. You all lied to me. My mother sighed. Violet, Sophia didn't want you there. She said you'd ruin her big day. And we thought it was best not to tell you. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. I had been completely erased. I returned home with a fire of rage burning inside me. I didn't care that they had excluded me from the wedding. I didn't care that they had never truly considered me part of the family. But what about their promise to Grandma? What about my tuition for my final year? When I stepped into the house, my parents and Sophia were sitting in the living room, engaged in an animated discussion. None of them noticed me until I spoke, my voice shaking with fury. Mom, Dad, we need to talk. My father looked up, frowning. What is it? I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. My tuition for my final year. You both promised Grandma you'd cover it. I need the money for this semester. My mother and father exchanged glances, as if they had already rehearsed their response. My mother took a slow sip of her tea before speaking softly. "Violet, that won't be possible." I froze. "Won't be possible? What do you mean?" My father sighed, as if this conversation was nothing more than an inconvenience. "We use that money as a down payment for Sophia and Nathan's new apartment. They need a stable place to live now that they're married. You can still take out student loans, can't you?" I felt my blood boiling. "What?" I shouted. "You took the money that was supposed to be mine and used it to buy Sophia a house?" Sophia leaned back in her chair, shrugging casually. "Violet, don't be so dramatic. I'm married now. I need it more than you do. You can always take a gap year and get a job. It's not a big deal." "A year? A year to do what? To be left behind, completely forgotten?" I didn't think. I lunged at Sophia, grabbing her by the shoulders. "You've taken everything from me. You have it all. Why do you still need to steal my dreams?" Sophia screamed, shoving me away, but I didn't let go. Years of pent-up anger exploded in that moment. "Stop it, Violet." My father's voice roared like thunder, snapping me back to reality. He stepped forward, his face red with fury. "Get out of this house right now." I stumbled back, breathing hard. My mother stood there, silent, without a trace of regret. I had lost. Without another word, I turned and ran to my room, throwing clothes into a bag. I couldn't stay here another second. I would rather have nothing than continue being a disposable afterthought in my own family. And this time, I would never come back. I returned to Lena's apartment with nothing but a bag of clothes and an empty heart. I had no home anymore. The next few days passed in a blur. I barely spoke. I didn't paint. I just lay there, curled up on Lena's couch, feeling like the world was crushing me, piece by piece. I had lost everything. My family had abandoned me. The money for my final year was gone. I couldn't graduate. I couldn't chase my dream. Lena tried to pull me out of it. She cooked for me, took me on walks, played my favorite music, but I just nodded absent-mindedly and sank back into the void. Then, one morning, as sunlight streamed through the curtains, I heard my phone buzz. I lazily reached for it, ready to ignore whatever notification had popped up, until my eyes landed on the subject line of an email. "Congratulations, you are the winner of the annual art competition." My hands trembled as I opened the email. I read each word slowly, afraid my mind was playing tricks on me. But no. It was real. I had won. The prize? A full scholarship for my final year of college. A joyful scream burst from my throat. "Lena! Lena!" I ran into her room, my eyes shining for the first time in weeks. Lena jolted awake, blinking at me. "What? What's going on? Are you okay?" I shoved my phone in front of her, my voice shaking with excitement. I won. I got the scholarship. I can finish school." She stared at the screen for a second, before letting out a scream of her own. She jumped out of bed, throwing her arms around me. "Violet, you did it." I laughed, tears of joy streaming down my face. I didn't need my family anymore. I could take care of myself. I could chase my dreams. Without anyone handing me permission. They had tried to bury me. But I had risen. And this time, I wouldn't let anyone drag me down again. It felt like my life was finally back on track. I had my scholarship, I could finish school without taking a single cent from my family. I thought I could finally leave the past behind me. But then, another truth surfaced. One that pulled me right back into the chaos of Sophia's world. One evening after work at the tattoo shop, I stopped by a cafe near campus to meet Jason. He worked part-time at a pawn shop and always had the wildest stories about the strange items people brought in. This time though, his voice was different, lower, heavier. "Violet, there's something I think you should know." I looked up from my coffee, raising an eyebrow. "What is it?" Jason glanced around the cafe, as if checking for eavesdroppers. "Do you remember your grandmother's ring?" My body went stiff. Of course, why are you asking? Jason sighed, pulled out his phone, opened a photo and slid it toward me. My heart nearly stopped. It was Grandma's ring. And the diamond crown Sophia had worn at her wedding. Jason nodded, his voice serious. 3 days ago your sister brought both of these to the pawn shop where I work. She sold them for cash. I clenched my phone in my hand, my blood boiling with rage. She sold them? I hissed through gritted teeth. That was Grandma's legacy. Jason bit his lip. There's more. He swiped his finger across the screen and pulled up a surveillance video. I stared at the screen as Sophia appeared in the frame. She handed over the jewelry bag, took a wad of cash in return, and then turned to wrap her arms around a man waiting at the door. Not Nathan. It was Ryan, Sophia's ex-boyfriend. The same man my parents had once forbidden her from seeing because of his involvement in illegal activities. Sophia hadn't sold Grandma's ring out of desperation. She had done it to fund her old lover. I stared at the screen, a chilling realization washing over me. Sophia had just made the biggest mistake of her life. I had sworn I would never go back. I had my scholarship, my own life, and no reason to care about Sophia, my parents, or anyone in that family anymore. But then, I received a call from Aunt Rebecca, my mother's sister. Violet, have you heard the news? Her voice was filled with excitement. What news? I asked, barely interested. Sophia is pregnant. The family is throwing a big party next week to celebrate. Are you coming? I was silent for a few seconds, thoughts swirling in my mind. Sophia was pregnant, and I had a video that could destroy everything she was building. I tightened my grip on my phone. Of course, Aunt Rebecca. I wouldn't miss it. That evening I stood in front of my parents' house, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. The house was filled with laughter, the clinking of glasses, and congratulatory cheers echoing through the air. Sophia stood at the center of the room, one hand resting on her stomach, glowing with happiness. Beside her was Nathan, her legal husband, and his family, all beaming with joy. I walked in and the room fell silent. My mother's face paled when she saw me. Violet, what are you doing here? I smiled, my voice calm. Mom? I came to congratulate Sophia, but before the party continues, there's something everyone needs to see. I pulled out my phone and connected it to the large TV screen in the living room. Within seconds, the pawn shop's surveillance footage appeared. Everyone watched in stunned silence as Sophia sold the diamond crown and Grandma's ring, then turned around to embrace and kiss Ryan, her ex. Nathan stiffened. What the hell is this? Sophia went pale, stammering. Nathan, I can explain. Explain? Nathan roared. You cheated on me behind my back? This baby? Is it even mine? His family gasped in shock. His parents exchanged glances before his father firmly stated, "We need a paternity test." My mother trembled. My father glared at me with pure fury. But I didn't care anymore. I had waited for this moment for a long, long time. 1 week later, the truth came out. The DNA test results were in. I wasn't there when Nathan received the paper, but Aunt Rebecca told me everything at our next family gathering. The baby isn't Nathan's. The room had gone completely silent when the doctor announced the results. Nathan, who had spent the past week convincing himself that his wife hadn't betrayed him, was finally slapped with the truth. Sophia burst into tears, desperately grabbing Nathan's arm. Baby, please, let me explain. But he yanked his hand away, his face contorted in pure disgust. Don't touch me. Nathan's parents stood up, their rage unmistakable. His mother looked at Sophia as if she were a stranger. You used our son, betrayed him, and now you expect us to forgive you? Nathan pulled a thick stack of papers from his jacket and threw them onto the table. Divorce papers. Sign them. Sophia's face drained of color, her lips trembling. Nathan, you can't do this to me. I have nothing. He smirked coldly. I had nothing left after marrying you, so I guess we're even. But it didn't end there. Nathan wasn't just divorcing Sophia. He was suing her. He demanded compensation for emotional distress, financial damages, and the extravagant wedding expenses his family had covered. The amount Sophia owed was no small sum. She had no one left to turn to except my parents. I found out about the lawsuit from Aunt Rebecca while I was at an art gallery. "Your parents had to take out a loan to help Sophia pay the settlement," she whispered over the phone. "Nathan's parents want nothing to do with her anymore." I raised an eyebrow. "And what did they use as collateral?" She was silent for a few seconds before replying in a hushed voice. "Their house." I couldn't stop the smirk that formed on my lips. They had chosen Sophia over me. And now, she was dragging them down with her. Their downfall had only just begun. I had never felt as free as I did now. After Sophia's scandal, I realized something important. I had no ties to that family anymore. I blocked my parents' numbers, changed my email, and completely cut off all contact. They chose Sophia. And now, they had to face the consequences of that choice. As for me, I had my own path. I poured everything into my final year of college. I painted more than ever before, channeling all my emotions, pain, and newfound freedom into every brushstroke. When graduation day came, I stood on stage, holding my diploma, stunned, as my professor announced me as one of the top students of the year. The entire auditorium erupted in applause. But the most important thing? I had done it. Without my family. Right after graduation, I landed my dream job at Everett Art Gallery, a prestigious gallery in the city. Not only did I work on curating exhibitions, but I also had the opportunity to organize showcases for young artists. But I never gave up my original passion. I continued designing tattoos in my free time, and to my surprise, some of my work was even featured in tattoo art magazines. One day, while I was busy setting up an exhibition, a deep voice spoke behind me. "These paintings are incredible, but I bet you have even more impressive pieces." I turned around to see Ethan, a talented graphic designer I had met at an art event. I laughed. "You're not so sure about that." We started talking, and before I knew it, he had become an important part of my life. Now, at 25, I am living the life I once thought I could never have. No more restraints, no more oppression, just me, my passion, and a completely new life. Violet's story is not just about betrayal, it's about reclaiming herself. She was abandoned by her family, stripped of what was rightfully hers. But she didn't fall, she stood up, built a new life, and proved that she never needed their validation. In the end, the best revenge wasn't retaliation, it was thriving without them. This isn't just Violet's story, it's a reminder that sometimes, to find freedom, we must let go of those who don't deserve a place in our lives. What do you think about Violet's story? Was she too ruthless in exposing the truth, or was it the only way to seek justice? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to follow the channel for more captivating stories about family and life.